Hello, and welcome to Counseling Theories Episode 2, Gestalt Theory. My name is Dr. Amber Hughes. I wanted to start with a little reminder, again, of why theories are important. You'll remember that they give us a framework for understanding people, behavior, the nature of dysfunction or problems, and how we might go about helping people overcome these problems. Your end goal with learning the theories should be to develop your own personal theory of counseling. This theory will likely combine 2 to 3 theories in a way that makes sense to you, given your view of the world. Keep this in mind as you learn about the different counseling theories. You may really like a theory but disagree with one particular component. That's okay. As you develop your own theory, you can use what you agree with while dropping what you disagree with. Okay, now on to the show. In this episode, I'm going to be talking about Gestalt Theory. Gestalt Theory was developed by Fritz Perls and other psychologists who came about in the time of Freud. Like Rogers, the person-centered guy, Perls developed Gestalt Theory kind of in response to what he didn't like about psychoanalytic. While I don't personally use Gestalt Theory, I do like some of the components of it and have used pieces of it in my counseling. Keep that in mind the reason why I tell you what my theoretical orientation is because I know I'm going to do a better job of explaining person-centered because that's what I get and that's what I do, okay? I'm going to do a less better job describing Gestalt because I don't use it necessarily. And I want you to know this because that doesn't mean that you should use what I use. You should consider that I am teaching from this place of my own experience. And so if you like Gestalt, do the work and learn a little bit more about it, right? Just because I don't go into depth with it or as in depth with it as I do the theories that I use, doesn't mean that you shouldn't use it if you like it. All of these, again, and I know I'm going to repeat myself here, but these theories in these counseling programs, you're just getting a taste of them. You're going to have to really do the work to learn more about them and consider how they apply to your own practice, okay? That's kind of my weekly, daily disclaimer for these theories. I just think it's important for you to understand, though, that what you're getting is the result of what your professors do and what we like and what our preferences are, because we're going to be more passionate and knowledgeable about certain things, okay? All right, view of human nature according to Gestalt or Perls. This is an existential and phenomenological approach. So existential is like the meaning of life kind of stuff, and phenomenological is like here and now experiences, okay? The initial goal is for clients to expand their awareness of what they are experiencing in the present moment. All right, so the focus in Gestalt is really on the here and now. The idea is that this increased awareness is curative. So this is not unlike person-centered, okay? So with Gestalt, we are not focusing on the problem so much as on the person, okay? So again, these are humanistic theories, so the focus is on making the person whole as opposed to coming in and saying, oh, here's your problem, let's diagnose it and let's cure you or fix you, okay? And then finally, through becoming aware of one's denied parts and working toward owning their experience, clients can become integrated or whole. So again, the purpose and the view is that healthy people are whole people, are integrated people, and through the process of psychotherapy, we can help people who are not integrated become whole or integrated, and then they will be able to work on their problems themselves, okay? So kind of that's the end game, is that they can do the work themselves. Our work is not on the problem, our work is on the client, and they can figure their stuff out themselves, kind of, okay? Key elements of Gestalt is the focus on the now. So the here and now, the what and how of experiencing, the authenticity of the therapist, okay? And so this is something, again, not unlike person-centered. So in Gestalt, it's really important that the therapist be present, be congruent. The therapist is going to be a little bit more of themselves in Gestalt counseling, Gestalt therapy, okay? So you may be more directive, you may be more use more self-disclosure in Gestalt than you are going to use in person-centered. Okay, so in person-centered, we're really, if you listen to that, my person-centered episode, we're really being a mirror and we're trying to reflect back to our clients. Whereas Gestalt, you're yourself and you're coming in and you have a relationship with the client that they call it the I thou of relating, where I have my feelings and I have my perspective, and I'm going to share that with you when appropriate. Okay, within the therapeutic relationship. There is more active dialogic inquiry and exploration. So again, that just kind of refers to the therapist being more active in this therapy. Okay, again, very different from it's different from person-centered, because in person-centered, again, the therapist is not as active. It's also different from psychoanalytic theories, because like in those theories and cognitive behavioral theories, the therapist or the counselor is coming in as kind of an expert, and we're saying, well, here's, like in cognitive, here's the thought, and the thought is wrong, or here's where your thinking has gone wrong, and can we identify specific thoughts, and then what are we going to do with those, right? Whereas Gestalt is, the therapist is not coming in so much as the expert as the person who's saying, hey, you, I need you to focus on the now, and here's what I'm seeing in you. So the counselor or the client is still kind of the expert on themselves in Gestalt theory. It's just that the therapist is a little bit more not expert, more direct in pulling the person into the here and now, if that makes any sense. Okay. So the focus is still on the client as like the expert and the one who knows more about themselves. The therapist is just more active in identifying like incongruencies and in engaging the client in this present moment. Again, if that makes any sense. And now that I'm like, rereading and relearning all this stuff about Gestalt, I'm like, I kind of do some of these things. So yeah, I like this theory. I think more now, the more I am growing myself as a counselor and counselor educator. So one of the key elements of Gestalt is this idea of they call it the paradoxical theory of change. The more we work at becoming who or what we are not, the more we remain the same. And the idea that authentic change occurs more from being who we are than from trying to be who we are not. So when I was an academic advisor, if you did not know that, there was this book. It was like this assessment that came out. I think it was put out by someone big, like New York Times or something. I mean, I totally just threw out that, but it was some big publisher, okay? It was called Strengths Finder, and there's probably, it's probably still out there, I know. But you had to buy the book. The book was like $13 then. And the book got you an access code to this assessment. Okay. So the idea behind the book was that, like our society focuses so much on identifying weaknesses, and celebrating people who overcome those weaknesses. And the example that they gave in the book was, about the movie, I think it's Rudy. I'm from Indiana, so I should know this. The kid who went to Notre Dame to play football, and he wasn't good at football, but he just tried really hard, and then finally his senior year he got into one game. I think I've only seen the movie once, but it's that concept of overcoming, right? Of just working really hard and putting our all into something that maybe we're not so good at, and we can't overcome it. And so that's what. So they say that. So the kind of the concept behind the book is that, why do we do that? Okay, why don't we celebrate our strengths and focus on our strengths, and doing things that we're good at? And that's what this paradoxical theory of change kind of reminds me of. Why do we focus on so hard on being who we aren't? And that act in and of itself can keep us from growing and from changing. Okay, so that idea of I have this problem, or I'm not this way, and I'm going to try really, really hard to be this way. But that focus on that can keep us from changing, when in reality all we need to do is focus on ourselves. Okay, so be here, be now, be who we are, and really strive to be integrated. And that focus will allow us to move forward. Okay. Some other key elements of Gestalt, the idea of holism. So, and that's probably one of the key, well, obviously one of the key elements, because I just said it was, but one of the big things of this theory, kind of the basis of it, is that we're really striving to be one person, where we're bringing together all our thoughts, feelings, behaviors, body, language, and dreams. Again, not so different from person-centered, where we're trying to bring the inner and outer world together. Field theory. So this is something that's kind of driven this practice. The field is the client's environment, which consists of the therapist and the client and all that goes on between them. So this is really speaking to the power of the therapeutic relationship, and how this relationship and this place, this space where we're talking and we're doing our work is important. Okay, so this, and again, I just see a lot of similarities here, again, because this is also a humanistic theory, so they fall under the same umbrella. But that idea that this relationship is important and this conversation itself is important. Okay, the client is a participant here. Okay, which is again very different from psychoanalytic, where the therapist is coming in and really driving the therapy and driving the knowledge that goes on in the room. But in Gestalt, the client is an active participant. Okay. The idea of the figure formation process. This is how an individual organizes experiences from moment to moment. So the foreground, what's in the foreground is considered the figure, and this is an art term, right? And what's in the background is considered the ground. And so how, and really what this is about is how the person sees what's going on and makes sense of information. Okay, so what's the figure, or what's in the foreground is what's most salient. But what's in the background is also important, because it's providing that framework, right, or that context. And then finally, the idea of organismic self-regulation. This is the emergence of need, sensations, and interests disturb an individual's equilibrium. Okay, so when something's wrong, our equilibrium is disturbed. Okay, these need, sensations, and interests kind of shake things up for us. Okay, and it's really, and I'm going to compare this a lot to person-centered, because I think it helps to compare these theories. It helps in understanding them to compare them to other theories. But it's that idea that we need an equilibrium. It's that kind of similar to that concept of self-actualization, where we're striving to be whole, to be actualized, or to be to have that equilibrium. And I just keep saying equilibrium, which doesn't explain things, I know, but I'm having one of those moments where like nothing is coming to my brain other than this one word. So sorry. All right, moving on. All right, goals. Okay, so Zinker in 1978 described Gestalt goals as expecting the clients to do the following: move toward an increased awareness of themselves, gradually assume ownership of their experience, as opposed to making others responsible for what they are thinking, feeling, and doing. Excuse me. And so Pearls also had this kind of attitude that you're yourself, you have this problem, and you need to work to fix it. And it's really putting the onus on the client to do the work and not so much on the therapist. And that's, again, I'm like, a lot of this stuff is kind of how I see counseling as well. And that's something that I talk about a lot whenever, again, when I'm, especially when I'm doing face-to-face classes and I'm having students do role plays. Whenever you, the counselor, are working harder than your client, in my mind, that's a problem. We should not be working harder than our clients. It's not my problem that I'm here trying to fix. It's your problem. And so how can we, and you don't even necessarily have to say, hey, this is your problem. You need to do the work. Depending on your approach, you certainly might be able to pull that off. But it's through using those basic counseling skills, through our questions, our paraphrases, and whatnot, that we put that pressure on them to do the work versus on us to do the work. That's why I talk about using silence so much, because silence is empty space, right? And whenever I'm trying to fill that silence, I'm doing a lot of work. It's just as uncomfortable for my client to experience silence. So rather than me be uncomfortable and try and fill the space, I'm going to sit back and let them be uncomfortable and let them fill the space, because this is their space to fill. Okay. Another goal is to develop skills and acquire values that will allow them to satisfy their needs without violating the rights of others. So, again, and I'm seeing this as also kind of not kind of, it is one of the weaknesses of both person-centered and Gestalt in terms of diversity, is that focus on the internal and focus on the self, which doesn't always consider the impact that other people have on us. Okay. But also talking about how we should focus on satisfying our needs without hurting other people. Become more aware of all their senses. So again, we're looking at increased awareness. Learn to accept responsibility for what they do, including accepting the consequences of their actions, whether they're good or bad, and be able to ask for and get help from others and be able to give help to others is another goal. So again, we're not seeing any like goals. We're not seeing any, like identifying problems or diagnosis. None of that. Okay. None of that's coming up in the goal of counseling and Gestalt therapy. The goal is really to work on the person in front of us. In practice, Gestalt therapists ask a lot of like what and how questions. So focusing on the here and now, but rarely ask why. Again, this is something I also like. I think that most of the times why questions are useless. We don't always know why. Maybe eventually you'll get to a place where you understand why. That's kind of, in my mind, a lot of times the goal of therapy is to understand the why. But just saying why, why did this happen, isn't going to get us there. But according to Gestalt, if we ask what and how questions, that's going to help us get to a place of that greater understanding, or that holism. They pay attention to body language and focus on language itself. So in Gestalt therapy, you're really depending on your observation skills to see when clients are becoming disengaged, or when they are maybe displaying some incongruencies with what they say and how they act. Maybe if they're not engaging with you, if they're kind of staring off into space, or they're becoming nervous, maybe they're, actively avoiding talking about something. So all of those things are important. It's an important part of Gestalt practice. It's that focus on the here and now of counseling. You seem to be, you're telling me one thing, but you're acting in a way that seems to go against that. That would be something a Gestalt therapist might say, right? Or I'm feeling like you're not really engaged with me right now, and I'm wondering why you're here. So again, that might be something a Gestalt therapist would say. And the focus on language, so that I-you language, or I-thou, they call it. Focusing on intentionally asking questions that are bringing the client in the here and now. That's a very important part of Gestalt therapy. Clients are active, okay? If they aren't active, then it doesn't work, okay? So this is a more active therapy. The client's active and the Gestalt therapist is active, again, employing the person into the room and making sure that they stay there, but also in that they are a person in the room as well, okay? So with Gestalt, you are a person in the room and you are not afraid to be there and to be more active, if that makes any sense. And then finally, relationship is key. Laura Pearls stressed the notion that the person of the therapist is more important than using techniques, which is very much the same as person-centered, right? So the focus is more on us as the therapist and what kind of characteristics we have and what we do than in using any one technique, which also speaks to the importance of learning the basic counseling skills and how important they are in what we do. Connections to mindfulness. So as I was, reading and preparing for this, this Gestalt talk, I'm like, oh, this sounds an awful lot like mindfulness. Mindfulness is something I'm kind of interested in, not like super duper, but something that is kind of a side interest of mine. So I Googled it, and oh, guess what? There was a website, Gestalt Mindfulness, so I wasn't too off base. So what mindfulness is it's a type of meditation. It's a type of practice where you're really striving to tune here we go. The practice of mindfulness is a way to tune your attention into yourself. We learn to notice our thoughts, our inner world of experiences and emotions, really bringing us to the here and now, which is not very different from Gestalt, which is, I think, probably why my mind went here right away as I'm getting more into this Gestalt theory. And I'll share the link with you. And if you're just listening to this, I'm pulling up the Gestalt Mindfulness webpage right now. But both are about becoming aware, about waking up, and I'm just reading from the website right now. Waking up to a felt sense of inner presence and peace, a self-awareness that renders our psyche more whole, overcomes inner fragmentation. So while Gestalt uses talk to bring us to this point, mindfulness is mostly done ourselves. But I think that if you're practicing Gestalt, mindfulness would be a good tool to use. And I think that whether or not you're practicing either from a Gestalt or using mindfulness, like a Gestalt framework or using mindfulness, I think that these concepts of being in the here and now are kind of interesting and important to consider in counseling. All right, finally, how does this theory stack up in terms of diversity? So some strengths. Gestalt experiments can be tailored to fit the unique ways in which clients perceive and interpret their culture. Gestalt therapy helps people integrate the polarities within themselves, which can assist bicultural clients in reconciling diverse aspects of their culture. So this idea of wholeness is useful. Also, the idea that the culture is easily integrated into the theory because the focus is on the person and the self. And then creative experiments can emphasize nonverbal behaviors. Also the focus on those observation skills, an awareness of language. All of those things are important whenever we're working with diverse people. Weaknesses. Clients who are culturally conditioned to be emotionally reserved may find the emphasis on feelings to be off-putting. And those who use Gestalt techniques in a mechanical way to elicit certain effects, like intense emotions, may lead clients to terminate from therapy prematurely. So some of the techniques are more advanced and they require a strong rapport before you use them. That's all I've got for Gestalt. I'm going to end this episode by having you consider the strengths of this theory. And as I've been talking about it, I've totally talked myself into being a Gestalt therapist. So I do, I do think there's a lot of value in a lot of these concepts. This idea of being present and in the moment has a place within all theories, I believe, like I said. So often, especially in today's tech-heavy world, we are not truly here. And this is why I've really started, like I said, kind of having a side interest in mindfulness. I think it's helpful to be able to pull people into the here and now. So when I'm teaching, it's hard to, it's important for me to help my students be able to push things away. So push away the phone and push away the emails and the deadlines and the assignments and really be present in the moment, because that's where, as a teacher, that's where learning takes place, is in the here and now, and in conversations and in engaging with material and with information. And you can't do that if you're constantly distracted. I feel it's the same way in counseling practice. If your client's not here, if you're not here, again, whether or not you're using Gestalt, kind of considering the importance of helping your client push away those things, I think is useful within all theories. So considering that maybe they need help, maybe they need help turning the phone off, maybe they need help pushing away thoughts and expectations and all those other things, so that they can be present in the moment, and take, just an hour or so to focus on themselves and be in this moment with you, the therapist, but also with themselves. That's just my thought on how important these concepts are from this theoretical framework.